Konnichiwa minasan, I'm Matayu and this is Manga You May Have Missed. I'd like to talk for a second on adaptation. To wit, the retelling of a story through a different medium, often by different people with different takes on the source material. It's important to remember when comparing different tellings of the same story that a perfect translation is impossible. A book cannot be transposed directly into a film. The methods used to convey information are different. I'm sure we've all heard the phrase, show, don't tell when it comes to film. In a book, there is nothing but tell. Skilled writers are able to tell without it feeling like you're reading a lecture. My point here is that an adaptation of a story can often diverge from the original source, usually due to the language of the medium used. If a film adaptation of a book or a comic leaves out minor details, it's not always a lack of caring on the part of the adaptation's makers. It's one of the reasons why Harry Potter doesn't have green eyes in the film versions. It's not that they didn't care, they did try to make his eyes green, but Daniel Radcliffe couldn't wear contact lenses. And the project wasn't any the lesser for the lack of detail they tried their hardest to include. Now, you do get adaptations that are different because the makers didn't care. Ugh. But these are generally regarded as bad on their own merits. Manga and their anime counterparts are no exception to this rule. I'd like to draw your attention to two franchises that have had two adaptations each, Fullmetal Alchemist and Hellsing. In the case of both series, the anime started production before the story was finished, necessitating a different ending. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, and I haven't heard anything negative about either anime, but there are also examples of the anime staff taking things in a different direction from the original creator, and things turning out okay. Although both series admittedly got new adaptations, respectively Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and Hellsing Ultimate, which were made after the manga had concluded and did follow the original story, so I might be talking out of my ass. Either way, this incredibly long introduction is for a manga and an anime that tell two different takes on the same story. This is Chrono Crusade. Chrono Crusade is a shonen manga that was written by Daisuke Moriyama. It was published by Kadokawa Shoten in Comic Dragon and later Dragon Magazine from November 1998 to June 2004. The series was collected in 8 tankobon volumes, which were translated and released by Madman Entertainment in Australia, ADV Manga in North America, and Chuang Yi in Singapore. A 24-episode anime adaptation ran from November 2003 to June 2004. It was directed by Yu Ko and animated by Studio Gonzo. The anime was licensed in Australia by Madman Entertainment, and in North America initially by ADV Films, and currently by Funimation. Now I'm sure a couple of you have by this point already started writing comments to gently and calmly correct my spelling of Chrono in the video title, as it has one more O than you're used to seeing. As it turns out, the series title itself was a spelling mistake. The publisher made a typo and lost one of the O's in Chrono. This was fixed in 2010 re-release of the manga in Japan, also featuring new book design and logo artwork designed to further distance the manga from the unrelated Chrono Trigger games. We begin with a cargo ship pulling into New York in 1924. The crew is very happy to be arriving at the port, as a yet unnamed individual has them in a panic. They've locked him in one of the waterproof chambers and have barricaded the door. The barricade breaks open and the person communicating with the bridge apologizes before we fade to black. A couple minutes later, we cut to a person on a car phone who says she can see the now on fire cargo ship. The speaker, a girl in a nun's habit, reacts in shock and confusion upon learning that she and her partner won't be receiving any backup. A problem, as her partner appears to be an even younger boy asleep in the car. She's told that they're the only ones close enough to do anything, as almost everyone else is dealing with an incident in Boston. The voice on the phone says she's counting on the girl, Rosette, and hangs up. Rosette grumbles that Sister Kate, the voice on the other end, is being unfair. She tries to wake the boy, Chrono, and kicks him out of the car when he tries to go back to sleep. We're shown full views of Rosette and Chrono and the shape of a gorilla-like man on the deck of the burning ship. Act 1 is entitled, Her Name is Sister Rosette. The cargo ship is running aground and the fire is spreading to the dock. Firefighters swarm to prevent the oil from catching fire, and the ship is identified as having come from England. One of the firefighters questions why it even crashed in the first place, and a police officer remarks that they ignored advice. The two are interrupted by the appearance of a survivor on the deck of the ship. The survivor is then crushed by a giant hand. The assembled men react in horror at the sight of a giant masked figure too large to be a human. They begin to run as the monster jumps to the dock, flattening a car as it lands. It begins to chase them until a car speeds in from out of nowhere and rams it. The onlookers are confused as Chrono berates the driver for breaking a car from the order. The driver tells him to stuff it and that you have to make sacrifices if you want to save souls. Chrono insists that the driver simply wants a new car and adds that the door is jammed. A boot propels it open and the driver turns out to be Rosette, the nun from earlier. She's embarrassed that people have witnessed her conduct, as said people struggle to reconcile her clothes with her bearing. The police attempt to send them off, but Rosette explains that they're from the Magdalene Order and introduces herself as Rosette Christopher and her assistant as Chrono. He doesn't get a surname. She says that they'll handle the case from here and hands the police chief a writ from a federal judge. The chief recognizes her as an exorcist and is about to explain the situation to the rest of the group when we discover that the monster is not, in fact, dead. Rosette calmly turns and shoots the monster in the face, asking it not to interrupt while she's talking. Rosette orders Chrono to bring out the Sacred, which turns out to be an armory. She pulls out a Tommy gun and trains it on the monster, which is bringing a massive hand around to strike them. She fills the space between them with bullets, sending it reeling. One of the firefighters asks the police chief who Rosette is, and he responds that she's a professional in the field of exterminating monsters. There's an organization that handles exorcisms and takes care of poltergeists, but the chief never imagined a lady as young as Rosette would be one of them. Chrono cheers as Rosette appears to have defeated the monster, but she stops him as the monster is still alive. It crawls back aboard the ship, Rosette calling for a pursuit. Chrono protests that they only have normal ammunition left, to which Rosette responds that that's why she brings Chrono along, grabbing him by the scruff of his neck and pulling him along behind her. The onlookers come out from behind cover, noting that the ship has begun moving again. Inside the ship, Rosette and Chrono come upon the monster's victims. The ship crashed because the entire crew was killed. Chrono holds his hand over one of the bodies and reports that none of the corpses have souls, and that they've already mummified. He guesses that the monster is dependent on spirits and souls, meaning it drains other people's life to survive. The trail leads to a closed door. Inside is a treasure trove of gold and art. Rosette is entranced by the wealth, saying it makes you feel stupid for working hard every day. Chrono has his own beliefs about Rosette's work ethic, but changes the subject to how rich England must be to be sending stuff this priceless to America. Rosette explains that the stuff is goods taken from when Britain had an empire, sent to repay England's debt to America from the First World War. Suddenly, the deck shakes, Chrono noticing that the ship is moving faster. Rosette tells him to get ready for the cross barrier and to bring out the specialty. He protests that they can't use it without Sister Kate's permission, but Rosette says that following the rules is pointless if they die from it. They have to use what they have. The monster, meanwhile, has positioned itself directly overhead. Rosette notices it in time and dodges its swipe, but the monster's strength makes the deck cave in underneath it. As she falls to a lower level, she calls back to Chrono to concentrate on making the barrier. She lands in a steam-filled engine room, and sees that the monster is controlling the souls of the crew to move the ship. She turns to face the monster as Chrono runs along the deck. Rosette dodges a blow and fires at the monster, but the bullets have no effect. She remarks to herself that regular ammunition won't work. The monster is an astro type, made out of human souls. She needs to use that. All of a sudden, the monster speaks, asking why she is bothering it when all it wants to do is go home. Chrono's voice issues out of the speaking tube, shocking Rosette out of her confusion. He reports that the echoes are all set and that they're ready to cross the barrier at any time. Also, they need to hurry because the ship is about to crash into Liberty Island. Rosette asks if he thinks they can pay the damages. That's a no. She gives the go-ahead to start when the monster covers her with something sticky. She wonders if it's trying to absorb her as the monster tells her not to bother it because it's going home. She says that doesn't give it the right to kill people. The monster is silent for a second and sends several souls flying at Rosette. She sees their memories as a gathering is broken up by a group of British soldiers who kill the congregation and take a small golden statue. The monster simply wants to go home. The vision is broken apart and the sticky stuff pulled back from Rosette with Chrono's appearance and declaration that Rosette's soul belongs to him, for the first time showing his fanged teeth. Rosette sets them straight that she is not his. The monster roars as the Principality's cross barrier has been erected with the ship at the center. However, it is not immobilized. Rosette orders Chrono to give her the specialty, which turns out to be an engraved bullet, all they've got left. Rosette intones what sounds like a prayer. Send peace to those who are lost, send rest to those who threaten others, and send death to the demon. She fires, the bullet ripping the monster to shreds and blowing a huge hole in the side of the cargo ship. Sometime later, the pair have uncovered the gold statue from Rosette's vision. The monster was a guardian spirit linked to the statue, likely from India or Nepal. The statue must have been taken when Britain colonized the country. Rosette knows this because of what it showed her. Though she feels sorry for it, it didn't give it the right to murder the crew. Chrono asks what she's going to do. She's silent for a moment, then says she's going to loosen the seal, holding up the watch-like pendant around her neck. She asks Chrono to take it home with his power. He agrees, saying that no one wants to be controlled by unfair powers. He holds up his hands, and the statue disappears. A narration caption describes the 1920s as a golden age, when the night was still tinted with darkness. Though America was blooming economically after the Great War, things that were not of mankind were still hiding in the shadows. Rosette and Chrono exit the bowels of the ship and react in horror. This is still the era in which science is unable to brighten the darkness, and people depend upon those who fight the darkness. Rosette calls in to report the mission's success to Sister Kate. The mission is done, but there's been a tiny little problem. They handled the monster alright, but the ship seems to have crashed into Liberty Island anyway. The end. The Chrono Crusade anime is free to watch dubbed on the Funimation YouTube channel, and you can probably find the subbed version kicking around there too if you look for it. I have not watched it in its entirety, but I've heard rumblings that it's darker than the manga, which seem to be borne out by its Wikipedia episode summaries. The first episode of the anime shows events in a slightly different order. It shows Rosette and Chrono responding to a different emergency, and subsequently causing collateral damage. Rosette is chewed out by Sister Kate in a scene taken from the second chapter, and we're introduced to Father Remington and the Magdalene Order's resident inventor-slash-pervy old guy. They then proceed to the cargo ship, and the plot follows the first chapter from there, cutting a bit out such as the Guardian Spirit's backstory, because that's not as important as the hints about Rosette and Chrono's backstory. I was pleased to find that, when it's appropriate, the anime kept the color scheme used on the manga covers. I was worried that the darker might be literal. The dub's voice acting is okay. It was a bit jarring for me at first, especially Rosette's voice, but as I watched it, it grew on me. That said, be prepared for period references. A lot of them. On the note of voice acting, the Japanese cast includes some names that you might recognize from other roles. Akira Ishida voices Chrono, and also Athrun Zala from Gundam Seed, Gaara from Naruto, and Kaworu Nagisa from Neon Genesis Evangelion. Rosette shares a voice, specifically Tomoko Kawakami's voice, with Utena Tenjo from Revolutionary Girl Utena, Soi Fan from Bleach, and Hikaru Shindo from Hikaru no Go. Finally, Father Remington is voiced by Sho Hayami, voice of Dragon Ball Z's Zarbon, Trigun's Nicholas Wolfwood, and Bleach's Sosuke Aizen. As the point of this review is to introduce you to the manga in question, I can't really talk about the ending. That said, bring tissues. For both versions, because the anime and manga have two different endings, both of which will require tissues. I hope I haven't scared anyone off, because Chrono Crusade is a lovely story no matter which version you experience.
一番綺麗な空を飛ぼうよ確かな未来へ Try